My name is Ewout Driehuis, VP at Threat Fabric, and you're watching Fusion Fireside, where we speak to the industry's most learned people about fraud, threat intelligence, and cyber threats. And today, we're speaking to a very special guest, an old friend of mine, John Fokker. As a former Marine and a former police officer, he started to work in the private sector and protecting companies across the world against cybercrime. He's one of the founders of No More Ransom and has a lot of stories to share. Join me in welcoming John Fokker. So, John, we've known each other for a pretty long time. I'm always been in awe of your career path and also about the excitement that you had. And I know one thing is from all the stories you shared with me about your adventures, I reckon there's a lot of stuff that you weren't allowed to tell me. So you must have seen so many exciting things as a Marine and as a policeman. How did you roll into that line of business and how did your early career go?
That's funny, Ewout, because it's definitely not planned as much as you think. Looking back, it makes sense, but being in that stage early in the life, I would have never thought that it ended up here. And that's funny, right? And that's maybe the way you should go about things. If I go back all the way back, even before the Marine Corps, I studied computer science. So there was always a bit of a nerd element in it. But I was one of the only ones, actually, at the time I worked at KPN as an internship in Hilversum. You might know that, where the big tower is. And I lived in Bussum, and I was the only one running to work and like being active. And I looked around and I was like, I don't know if this is for me right now at this moment in my life. So I had some friends that were in the Marine Corps, and I applied and I got in. And I went through basic training and all that stuff. Actually, no, let me pause back. I had a friend of mine, we joined the Green Berets. We wanted to be the commandos in the army, because that was the only unit where you could become like special forces or in special operations from a civilian point of view. But unfortunately, I got injured. So I didn't make the cut. I was very eager, didn't make it. And from there on, I transitioned into the Marine Corps, which I was fit again, strong, so I could do that. And I had some more friends there as well. And from there on, from your basic infantry to eventually moving into special counterterrorism, special operations type of work. And I did that for many years. I loved it. Traveling all over the world, doing all kinds of stuff, from Afghanistan, Somalia, parachute jumping, you name it. It sounds really cool, and it is, but I was never home. I was like, there were years where 6 weeks per year I was home. So I felt that something had to change. So at that time, I was looking like, okay, what can I do? Because can I do something in the Navy or in the Marine Corps? And maybe I'll become an officer, or I do something else, or I want to do something. I actually wanted to do something with my college degree. I was like, okay, I was at that point after about like 8 years where I was like, okay, if I don't do anything with this degree now, it's going to be useless. That's my thought, right? At the time, you never know how that plays out. But unfortunately, because I was like, okay, but maybe we should do something on cyber and kinetic warfare together, like hybrid at the time. And I brought that up, and I was advocating this, and also like how do you combine digital penetration testing, like as we know it in the industry, with physical penetration testing and all that stuff? Because some of the physical penetration testing we did as a team for the Navy. And yes, there was an interest, but it wasn't enough to move me in that career path. And funny enough, I was doing a lot with the police already. So our unit was a combined military police unit. And there were some folks from the police, and they said like, hey, why don't you take a look at this? Like they're actually hiring folks as forensic investigators, like digital forensic investigators on organized crime teams. So the teams that are investigating organized crime. I was like, yeah, why not? So it's funny enough, I applied and I got to the interview, and um, it's a funny story is like at the moment I got at the interview, the day before we had like, there's like this graduation ceremony for new recruits. So part of their training for the new people at the end is that they do like a self-defense course. And it's not like you have to break a little plank of wood, but it's mostly, it's a test of courage and it's a test of determination. So you're in full gear. The new recruits, they have to like, punch bags, run the obstacle course. You basically tire them out and then you wrestle with them and all kinds of stuff. So I was one of the opponents. So I wrestled with folks. I wrestled with like 20 people that day. So I was pretty tired, but my face was pretty beat up too. I had like all these scratches and black eyes. And I came into the interview with a black eye and like with scratches. And the guy was like, who the hell just walked in? And actually, it was really funny because that person became a personal friend of mine later on as well. And he gave me a shot. So I'm forever grateful for that. And I landed in a team that did investigated organized crime. So within the Netherlands, it's organized crime is a lot about assassinations. As you can understand, it's a lot of drug related stuff. So there's a lot of stuff on cocaine trade, which is quite big in Western Europe. Some of the Dutch gangs, they would run the cocaine trade for Europe to the import-export of the imported stuff. And then other teams would also investigate synthetic drugs. That was more in the southern parts of the country, but I was around the Amsterdam region, so it was more cocaine trade. And the police, like I transitioned into the police, and which was really interesting. It was it was similar, but also very different in a way. So, yes, you're still chasing down bad people. You're still trying to make everybody safe, but it's less kinetic, if you might say so, and it's more desk job, and it seems on paper you're like, oh wow, wiretaps, and it seems really cool, and until you actually have to have your schedule to listen to the wiretap, and then it's like, yeah, I'm here in the office somewhere in the southern parts of Amsterdam, listening to criminals, having a great time. And this is my Sunday. And then you just like type everything out. So I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a German movie, Das Leben der Anderen.
Yeah.
So it got a little bit of that feeling, but it was very interesting to experience because it's also very humbling, like what the police does. And the investigative team it's intrusive, but you have to be respectful about what you do, and it's an honorable job. So I learned a lot there too. And I was one of the way it was organized. You had operational teams, so they were all investigating different parts, and they all had their own digital investigators. So I was one of the investigators of one team. I was able to do my master's degree for the police as well. I did it on a topic, we won't discuss here, but it had something to do with mobile phones. Not the kind that Fabric is on, but different ones. But eventually I felt like, okay, what's my career path within these teams? Because you are already the specialist, already the person. So after a couple of years, I saw that NHTCU, or the Dutch high-tech crime teams, they were expanding. So they were hiring more people, and they always have a challenge. And it's not that I'm far from a super smart guy, but that challenge kind of grabbed me. I was like, okay, the cyber challenge. So it's like a cyber puzzle. You have to solve it, or you try to solve it. And when you apply, they will discuss your methodology, the way you went about, and if you solved it.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly, like, it's funny, these little things, like when I'm talking to you now, it's like I was in bed and I found the last part. I was like, I had to decipher something, and there was and I found the message, and I was like, yeah, I was like all excited, but it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was time for bed. So that took a little longer before I got to sleep, but I had the interview with NSTCU. That went well. And then I got hired. And then, actually in that period, during the interview period, was when the MH17 flight got shut down. So we were pretty much everybody within the Dutch police that was either a specialist or whatever was involved in that investigation. That's something, I wasn't there for very long because I had to transition out to NSTCU, but yeah, that was a very, that's a long but honorable investigation to be a part of. And then I moved into the NCCU team. So they started off years back with like 15 to 20 people in the basement of like, I don't know if you're familiar, like there's the National Police Office in Driebergen, as you might call, is a big building next to the highway. As big as the building is, that team started off in the basement. It was like, it wasn't really a lot. But cybercrime kept evolving and kept becoming bigger and bigger. So they needed more space. So they had one expansion from 30 to 60. And then I was in the expansion from 60 to 90. And I think they're even bigger now. So it's crazy how this works. But I was, how would you say that? A technical supervisor. So you have like a tactical supervisor and a technical supervisor on each team. So I was responsible for all the digital investigative methods. So when would we put a IP wiretap, or do we do any Wi-Fi sniffing? Do we do any, how do we do our forensics and all these types of investigations? Who do we partner with from the private sector? So that was my responsibility in the team. So you had a team about 30 investigators, a mix between tactical, so like your old school, and that's actually the golden success of NSTCU. You had like your regular police officer, well, not regular, but somebody with a healthy interest in digital investigations, but with a very classical schooling. So they know the penal code, they know how to write subpoenas and all that stuff, and they know how the proceedings go. And they team them up with somebody who's actually came from outside and was just a technical expert, but had the right mindset. And that made up the team. And we did some phenomenal investigations, really cool stuff with banks and with other folks. And it opened up a new world to me. So much. And my focus was at the time on ransomware. So every team had a certain focus, from banking malware to whatever. And I had ransomware. And this was really funny because at the time I was like, oh, I really hope I get banking malware. And I was in the early start of ransomware. I was like, darn it, I got ransomware. Well, actually that has been a godsend. I
remember that so well, John.
Yeah.
It's because back in those days when the cyber criminal, and that was in the very beginning when the NSTCU was focusing on this stuff, the vast majority was actually banking malware and fraud. So this was really, the fraud space had a strong overlap with police forensics and the police cybercrime unit. And it was an amazing time, wasn't it?
It was great. You had the banking teams, and it was like, Game Over Seuss just finished that investigation. So there was a lot of Drydex, and there was a lot of stuff going on. That's like, oh, this is where it is. I want to go after the Russians. I want to go after the big guys. And then you got like ransomware. And I was like, yeah, but it's just hitting consumers. But I was like, you know what? Let's take this and let's see what we can do with this and how it will and how it will evolve or whatever it is. Like, okay, this is the problem I've been handed. Let's solve this obstacle. Let's solve the problem. It was really funny because it was mostly consumer based, and that was when one investigation really was a breakthrough for NSTCO, and globally, and then really sparked something bigger. So together with the X-ray team, with Marijn Schuurbiers and Michel Mollema, like all Dutch names, obviously, I won't force anyone to pronounce those names. But they were working on an investigation called CoinVault, which was a ransomware version, was targeting a lot of people globally, about 30,000 victims there were. But the funny thing is, the criminals made some errors in the code. So we early on could figure out, we had a suspicion that there were Dutch criminals. And sure enough, there were actually two brothers who lived in the center part of the Netherlands. And we did the full investigation. We were able to arrest them. They got trialed and sentenced and everything else. But the funny thing is, for the first time, the police actually found where they kept the decryption keys. So you have thousands of people that are encrypted, and then you're sitting on this pile of keys as the police. with, okay, what do we do with this? Do we hand them out? Do we approach these people individually? What do we do? And mind you, this is just after, and I have to go back in memory, like after Bredoland, where the Dutch police used the botnet to notify people that were infected by the botnet and then deinstall the botnet from those victims. So you can imagine like being a citizen in a country across the globe, getting a message from the Dutch police in your screen saying, like, this is the Dutch police and you're infected with a botnet. That kind of reaches across borders, and that upset certain folks. So we were like,
there
okay,
was a huge discussion back then, I remember, and many people and professors of law giving their opinions. It was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, true. Because how would, like, obviously we're from the Netherlands, we're Dutch, so it's like, oh, but it's the Dutch police. We trust them. We have a pretty high, like, internationally, we're pretty seen as like trustworthy police authorities. But yeah, if you would say like it's like the Iranian police, let's say they found something, right? Or like some other country, and you're like, okay, what the hell how are they doing in my computer? What else do they have? What are they siphoning off? And like, is this legit? So that was a big discussion. So we were like, okay, yeah, let's not do that again right now because it's kind of fresh. We wanna make sure that we do this the right way. And at the time we teamed up, and we're like, okay, let's team up with the private sector. In this case, it was Kaspersky and McAfee at the time, and they were like, okay, let's build a decryptor. And okay, we have one decryptor, and we kind of pushed it out, and we're like, and I remember I was in discussion with Marijn and other folks at the time, and we're like, but if this is one ransomware family, can we really just can we scale this? Can we do this more, like with more ransomware families? And mind you, these families were mostly targeting consumers. So that's different from the big game hunting thing that you see nowadays. But it was like there were a lot of phishing emails. There was a lot of like rootkits, or not the rootkits, exploit kits. Sorry. There were just installing en masse. So there was a lot of like, we call it spray and pray. But we had these keys. So, okay, sure enough, we built this like little group, and we're like, okay, this could be bigger. So we involved Europol, and we started No More Ransom at the time. So that was really cool. It was really exciting time to be part of that, because you as a police, you're very often going after the crime. So you're always the bearer of bad news. And especially if you're in an investigative unit, you're only looking at criminals. So you kind of get this like lens of like, yeah, you're triggered to see the bad thing almost. And this was an opportunity to do something good. It's like, oh, we can actually help people. We can make the problem less pressing, and we can break the business model of the criminals at the time. And that worked well for a very long time. I think like even still, it prevented like almost $1 billion worth of ransomware payments, which is phenomenal. It's just great. And to date, if we get new keys, I think Europol will still build a decryptor and host it on No More Ransom. So that was a great achievement. And from then on, we've done this. I've done more investigations. I kind of moved into the intel space because, believe it or not, I was one of the few people that was doing things in their own time on Russian forums and monitoring and seeing things. And it frustrated me that on one hand, we get like, okay, yeah, we want to start an investigation on this. And I was like, yeah, okay, but that person is on XSS or an exploit, and they're actually advertising all this stuff, and they put code snippets in, and they're interacting with these other folks. So they're very overt, very, very open in what they're doing. So why don't we go in and take that data and then see if maybe we interact with them, and then it's like, no, because that's in the Dutch law, that's going undercover, which is, and that goes back. This is like not a short masterclass in Dutch law, but back in the day when there was organized drug trade, the Dutch police went a little bit too deep in the undercover stuff. And then the authorities said like, okay, we need to have some framework around this. So you won't go and do all these like purchases or pretend to be a criminal. It's like, we're not Miami Vice. That's kind of like the end on the moral of the story. So what they did is they created this framework, and an undercover operation is the most intrusive thing you can do. So you need like sign off by a judge or whatever, but the internet was not a thing when this happened. So being like everybody has a fake account. So a fake account would be undercover. So that would be like, okay, you're doing something very intrusive, but yeah, if everybody has a fake account, how intrusive is it? So that was kind of the dispute that was going on. And but that was a really interesting time. We were doing a lot of stuff with Intel. We were doing a lot of stuff with data science at the time, and refining really an Intel strategy. Yeah. And this was all still with the police. And at the time, I, partly because of Noel Ransom and some other folks, I did get more and more in touch with the private sector. And inevitably how these things go, it's like, hey, they reach out. It's like, how would you like to work for us? And I said, okay. Yeah, I never gave it much thought. I was like, okay, but I don't want to be in sales. That's my first reaction. I don't want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is, I can still feel that we're doing the right thing. So I don't want to, they often say like, you go to the dark side. So it's like, don't want to sell my soul to the dark side. That was my statement. I think I literally said that in an interview. Was my future boss, and he's like, no, we'll figure something out. And essentially, eventually, I moved to McAfee, and that was just spun out of Intel Security. And McAfee was they had a head of cyber investigation function which I got, and basically it is like you have malware reversers, and there's people like they're looking at malware to make the products better, to write blogs or whatever. But very often when you're in the reversing in the research stage, you find evidence of mistakes. So you can find leads that can lead to either the arrest or to a takedown or whatever. So I was working very closely with our researchers and with legal to grab all those elements and then reach out to the proper authorities, because I also had the network, to see if we can do a takedown. So I did that for many years. That worked out well. And eventually, the whole Intel part came towards me, and sure enough, McAfee went public and then got sold. Like in our industry, right? It happens. You go public, and then they got sold off. The enterprise part, so the consumer part, stayed publicly listed. We got sold off to a private equity firm, and that private equity firm also purchased the products from FireEye at the time. So Mandiant and FireEye were one. So they purchased the products from FireEye, the products from McAfee, and fused us together as Trellix. And Trellix is where I work to date. And that's, I run their threat intelligence. I'm their VP of threat intelligence strategy. So what that means is now I oversee the research. So we have research teams all over the globe, and we look at all these threats. We look at all the stuff that comes in from all the sensors, because that's also what really appealed to me, is like, oh, wait, we can look at telemetry from EDR and from endpoints and from network sensors and from data and from email now. And we have some really important customers to protect, but we can see threats emerging early on. And this is really cool. You're really at the tip of the spear, at the point. So this is I found that really a great challenge to have. And I got an opportunity to really build a team from ground up, grow it, and build some products. So yeah, I'm mostly involved with research, making sure that whatever we find leads to better efficacy of the products. We also purposely build Intel products. We provide our services team with the right information so they can build the right Intel reports for customers. We publish, we speak, we do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the common thread, if I look back, and I spoke a lot, is like, I think I like to give bad people a bad day. And that's still the case.
Look, I think there's one advantage that the bad guys have right now, is being the adversaries are being cyber criminals, is in contrast with the kinetic, as you call it, adversary. They don't get to see how tall you are and how an imposing figure you are, right? So I don't know, the people that don't know you personally don't know maybe how tall you are. Are you 7 foot by any chance, or close to it?
6'8".
6'8". Well, there you go. It is a heck of a lot taller than I am. At least the cyber criminals won't be able to see that over their digital lines. But yeah. So in your capacity, John, and again, I've been a huge fan of your work for decades now already. And with all the data that you now procure, and your team is dozens of people strong. And so there must be a lot that you process and that Trellix processes. So are there any standouts in 2025 that made an impression of you, events that you thought might be shaping the digital world as it is today?
Oh, totally. So every 6 months we publish a report, the cyber threat report. And I know we're recording this beginning of November, and it'll probably go live anytime soon. But the latest report has just come out last week. So that's out there as well. And we're doing exactly this. We're looking at, okay, what stood out? And obviously you have your usual suspects from APT groups and all kinds of stuff. And there's AI and ransomware and vulnerability. So we kind of have like this really broad brushstroke across the cyber threat landscape to give a lay off the land. And I'd like to say it's more quantitative data. And then sometimes we also will zoom in on qualitative data on certain points. But if you'd ask me things that stood out for this year that I really saw take a flight, there's obviously AI. You cannot escape AI because that's what's going on. We've been monitoring and making cyber criminal usage of AI a part of this threat report actually since ChatGPT became live. We were like, okay, when OpenAI launched that, like, was it November 2022, I believe, or 23? I forgot already. We were like, okay, this could be a game changer. Let's keep an eye on this. Let's see how criminals are using this. Because we were in the same stage as well. They're like, oh, this is cool. Okay, how can we use it? And every consumer was like, okay, how can we use this? And then we can expect the same thing being done by cyber criminals. And it's funny to see if I layer all the reports on top of each other, how that involvement took place. And I honestly believe that around now, this year, or like we're already there, but we'll probably see it next year, we're at an inflection point. If I talk about cyber criminals predominantly, and I'll leave the nation states out of this right now, how they leverage AI, but when you look at cyber criminals it's a business. And everybody has their speciality. Somebody's really good at, like, they're a VPN hoster. So they have a VPN service that they're offering. So yeah, I'm a cyber criminal. I want to commit crime. I need to have a good VPN that doesn't keep logs. So I'll get one that's criminal. So they'll, I'll work with them. That can pay in Bitcoin, which I've laundered already. Oh, wait, I laundered Bitcoin. Where did I do that? How did I do that? With a Tumblr. That's another service. Okay, I need to host my malware. Doesn't matter if it's mobile or whatever. I need to host it somewhere that there's the payload that somebody can pull down. Okay, I cannot go to a legitimate hoster and just say like, hey, I'm bad guy X. Give me some hosting and I'll pay for you. I can't really pay it normally. I need to pay it in like cryptocurrency and whatever. So there's what I'm going at. There's for every part of the cyber criminal kill chain, there are services. There's specialized services. In order to commit crime, a criminal has to acquire these services or has to work together with adjacent services next to his own specialty. So maybe you're good at building malware, but you want to have all the other elements. Historically, that would require that there is an interaction. So there's a relationship building. That's why there's forums. That's why there's chat groups, because it's like, hey, Awad, I think you have a good reputation. You're really good at this. Can we do business? How much will it cost? So it's a very almost trust-based environment, even though you don't see anyone, and it's all about reputation and all these things. And when AI came into play, you saw people innovate within their own space. So they were looking at their own speciality and they were saying, like, okay, how can I improve what I'm doing right now? But that's interesting because you can innovate, Awad, all you want, but because you're part of a chain, you're only limited to the capacity of the person left and right of you. if they do not innovate, then yeah, you're the smartest person in the room, but it's not going to have that much of an impact because it's limited by like the amount you can do. So like, let's say you build a fast flux AI driven hosting. So you spin up machines, or you have a system where you can spin up machines, or you can sign up your users real quick. If you do not have hosting providers or illegal hosting providers that can provide you with the infrastructure at the same rate as you can actually divide or design your AI to spin up stuff, yeah, you're going to be limited by that hosting provider.
Yeah.
And then it's also like, okay, but if your customers are not equipped to deal with it, yeah, then you can be like, you have a great service, but it's not going anywhere. So that inflection point that I'm seeing is like everybody has been innovating separately. And it's very similar to the industries where you see agentic AI take over. So they're going into the same, because they're looking at the same data. They're looking at what OpenAI does, and they're trying to design the same thing. So what I expect us to see is that these different services or different steps are going to be more agentic, and that our criminals will actually be able to chain things together quite easily. And that's, to me, is worrisome, because that's not only it speeds things up, so it makes it quicker, but it also allows people that did not have prior knowledge to do things like let's say you're good at doing post-exploitation. So you're a Cobalt Strike guru and you can go through a network, but you're really not good at doing vulnerability exploitation, and you needed to have somebody else do it. Well, now with an agentic service, it can be automated from okay, we see that this person or this organization has this system, it's vulnerable. Okay, we'll have the AI look at the firmware, look at the software. We'll fuzz it. We'll find a vulnerability. Okay, boom. Okay, you're in, and then that whole chain is going to be completely automated.
Yeah,
and it could be hands off. It could be like you will be found and arrested, but your exploit and your attack chain could still be alive on the internet. So that's the stuff that that's what I fear.
right.
Or where I think we're going. I don't really fear it as much, because I do see like, okay, in the industry, when it looks at like what you guys are doing on the mobile, what we're doing, what our industry peers are doing, I have a lot of good hope that we still have a good advantage, because we have a data problem and AI can really help with it. So that's some of on the AI side, the things that I've seen. And then another big thing is, and that's actually more fraud related. And it's really funny, because I have to hand it to them. Like, I find it's pretty genius, but they use multiple layers of fraud. It's the DPRK, so the North Korean IT worker fraud. And when I first read about it, I was like, really? Is this a thing? And I also oversee our hunting. So we have a hunting service where we hunt for our telemetry and we proactively alert customers. And we uncovered that there were quite some, like outside of the high-tech industry, financial industries, even healthcare providers, large providers that had a lot of money, they were being targeted by North Korean workers that are trying to apply for a job. And that's the thing. They go through email and they scam their way in. They use, on the back end, they use all the AI to go through the interview process. They actually use, and I don't have I think, there's another company that actually demonstrated what kind of software they were using. There's like a deep fake software, just like you can do an overlay in your Google presentation or your Google Meet space, where you can have like a different face, or you don't look as tired or whatever. So they would use a deep fake during their interviews, and they would actually drive in their email interviews. So like, oh, we want to do a video interview because that's more trustworthy. They will basically apply for a tech job at a company. They will get the job. They will receive a laptop, and the laptop would be like shelved in a whole laptop farm. And they would just VPN into, or into the laptop, do the bare minimum to do all the projects, and then get the salary. And at the same time, they would just like scour the network, look for IP, look for other things, look at customers they might have. So if it's also a supply chain risk. So it's like it's a fraud thing. It's an intrusion thing. It's a IP theft. It's supply chain, and they were doing this en masse. So we were uncovering this, and we were alerting folks because we monitor our email solution, and we're like, hey, financial institution, you might not want to hire this person because we know that the email address or some of the other parameters that they were using are actually linked to North Korea, and they're trying to break into your company. And it's funny because they're not using any malware, so it's very hard to. You need to have additional intelligence to understand to detect it, and you would not like we alert companies, and then it becomes really interesting because whose problem is it? Because it's HR that's doing the talking. They're just interacting with folks, and then you have a hiring manager. But then you could say, like, okay, but this is a SOC issue. But the SOC, if you have a security operations center, they only work on alerts. If they don't have any IOCs that are linked to this, or there's no malware or whatever, it will go completely like they won't see it. But then when the person is hired and they get a fake paycheck and they do all kinds of things, you can argue, okay, it's fraud. It's like internal fraud, but it's still a fraud case. So would the fraud department pick this up? So it's very interesting to see where this problem resides and lives and who is taking action on what.
Yeah, that's a very recognizable issue in the fraud space as well. It's like some of the fraud people, once they learn that some of the IOCs were already living in the cybersecurity department for weeks, they're like, well, why didn't you give them to us? Well, we have no mechanism to give them to you, right? And so it's a very recognizable problem is whereas the threat intelligence, the cybersecurity people and the fraud people starting to align on these topics because you never know where it's going to head from the initial point of access. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That's super interesting, John. So you've been working in this space for a long time. So the other day, my son asked me a super good question. He asked me the question, hey, Dad, you're in fraud prevention, right? So are you good at your job? I said to my son, well, yes, I hope I am. So, well, is the problem getting smaller than that? I said, well, no, it's actually getting bigger, son. So, and then he said, well, I don't think you're very good at your job then. So I thought it was of course, it was a fallacy, but also it was food for thought, I think. So what do you think, John, with all your years of experience, is the problem is not getting smaller, right? No. We're still dealing with issues like failing to communicate across different departments. Are we doing things wrong? What could we do better? What are the messages that we should take to heart for 2026?
Yeah. It might not be the most positive one, but like crime, like I had a coworker once and he said it very, very, very to the point and was very good about it. And he said, like, listen, you can never solve crime, period. And what we're all doing here is making a difference. But very often from the face value, like if you do a takedown or whatever, like it doesn't matter what you do, there will always be people, but is the problem solved? No, it's not always solved. But the only thing that stands between the bad prevailing and the good, or the above the good, that's us. That's us. So we have to do this fight. We have to continue to pursue and take down the criminals. And yes, it's you feel like you're outnumbered or outgunned, and it's not only like you might not always have the means to it, but you would the people that you're protecting might not know, and they fall for fraud cases or there's so many different elements in play that make it a bit complicated in a way, but that should never stop us from saying like, okay, we can't solve this, so we're not doing it. It is, you can almost like, it's almost like a plague, right? It's like one of those, like you roll the ball up the hill and then you're almost at the top, it rolls down. It's never ending.
Right. Sisyphus.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Sisyphus. But that shouldn't discourage us from doing it, because it's true. It's like we're the only ones, like securing the cybersecurity industry, from the private sector, but also the public sector, law enforcement, all these things. Those are the only ones that stand in between like total chaos and somewhat having things in order. And mind you, we're finding a lot of things, and there's a lot of things being detected, and it's accelerating, but this is always going to be the case. It's like that's part of innovation as well. It's so we'll have to embrace it, and I am hopeful that we'll find tools that we could keep up, and it will always feel like a shortage. That's no denying. Like it will always feel like, oh my God, it's like we're going against an uneven adversary or whatever. But yeah, we'll have to do it, because we are the ones securing innovation. We are the ones making sure that people can bank, that people can use their mobile phone app and bank with confidence and with integrity and with trust. If we're not here, people cannot transfer money. They cannot like do their business. They cannot interact online, because you don't know who you're sending money to, who you can trust online. So we have a very important job. And yes, we can always use more. And that's the age old, like cybersecurity is like a money pit. You can throw a lot of money into it, but it's very hard to see the return on investment. It's not always measurable in a way, but it's needed. So it's we are you can almost call us the insurance policy of society sometimes.
Yeah. So, John, from your time in the Marines, from the police to securing the world, private individuals and businesses like at McAfee and Trellix, nowadays you've moved to a place close to a very large mountain, and you spend your downtime on the slopes, binding your very long skis below your feet and going downhill across routes that have never been tracked or skied by other people before. What does that do for you, and how does it fit into your professional life?
Now you're explaining where I live now. So that's like, you were very cryptic about it. I like it.
It's a large mountain. I'm not saying anything.
It's a large area. So yes, I moved to the US, and I live luckily close to a large mountain range. In my downtime, I like to go skiing and mountaineering and being outside in nature. So I like city life, but I also like the outdoors life. What predominantly backcountry skiing, or off-piste, as we say in Europe, and finding pristine routes. It allows me to detach, to completely plug out of like work life. And I need to be 100% engaged with what I'm doing at that moment. It does not allow for, the skiing part does not allow for other thoughts. So you're only focused on that. So it kind of like, it's like this purge of, you had all these things in the back of your mind, and it just gets like erased because you're focused on something else. So I feel it's liberating, and it's the closest thing you can come to flying on, like without leaving the ground. I feel like it's a really, really great sensation. And being in nature, respecting nature, navigating terrain, respecting, making choices about what is dangerous to do, what not. But also, like when you're skiing down, something can look like quite challenging. And instead of, if you commit to it completely and not with fear, just give in and go for it, and just embrace it in a way, and face the challenges that you might find head on, and trust your ability and your training, your instinct and everything, that you can cope, and that you're agile enough to cope with whatever comes your way. And 90% of the times that happens, and sometimes you just you turn into a yard sale, or you fumble and then you eat some snow. But having that attitude, that's to me is very important. And it's more about like how you approach life. Do you approach life fearful? Do you approach life? You see the challenge and you approach it with enthusiasm and excitement. And even though it's scared, you're still going all in. So for me, that's there's a life metaphor in them, but that maybe it's because I like skiing and outdoors. But it allows me to be one with nature, and be really in tune with my body and what I'm doing, and forget about everything else. So it's a great activity to do, and I'm happy to say that, like, for the first time in my life, I was able to ski in October on the Northern Hemisphere. So that's a first. So that was pretty fun.
That's amazing. Well, for one, I am happy that you find that time so that we can enjoy another decade or maybe two of John Fokker defending the world against all kind of threats. So thank you for that, John. And also thank you for being a good friend over the decades. So for Fusion Fireside, my name is Ewout Driehuis. Thank you for watching, and check out www.threadfabric.com/Fusion Fireside for earlier episodes.